Welcome here. I'm so honored that you came for the last session of this program, of the Understand Objectivism program. It's completely alright. I see new faces here that you haven't been on the fourth session prior to this debate. It's completely okay. I think in the first part, so sort of conclude or. Yeah, well, let's start with the conclusion, what we actually did the last four sessions. And so it's completely alright that we are here. One thing to mention, Jiří, as always, brought some literature, so I think after the debate we are free to buy some of them. Maybe all of them.
There's some free stuff there.
There's some free stuff. Jiří can definitely say a bit more about that. And one other thing to mention, this Wednesday we have here another event. Actually, here with our friend. I forgot his name. Jakub Živčák, thank you very much. I'm very bad at names, so Jakub Živčák will have a fantastic presentation here, and so same time on Wednesday here. So I think we are good to start. So yes, let's start gently. I'm sure this debate is gonna be a bit controversial, but let's start gently. So can you, as I said, summarize or conclude what for the people who weren't here, what was this program about?
I think that's a question on Jiří because he did most of the sessions.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You can. Add or whatever comment on whatever I have to say. Boo, I'm not prepared for that. But first thing that struck me was, I think it was in the first session on metaphysics. The most important thing I really believe is that when presenting Ayn Rand's thought, we should keep in mind that she was primarily an advocate of reason, not of capitalism. This is so important, not just because of the controversies with other, let's say, groups that claim to defend capitalism and freedom, but simply to make justice to her, to realize that, and she explicitly said so, she explicitly emphasized, I am not primarily an advocate of freedom and capitalism, and I'm not even primarily advocate of selfishness. I'm primarily and first of all advocate of reason, which is extremely important, which means that freedom and capitalism are not the goals. They are the means. Means to what? Means to allow, respect man's need to use reason to live. So it's not that, as I said, it's not, and I'm just repeating it and it's so important. It's not that, okay, I sort of am convinced, whatever, however I came to the conclusion that, we need to defend freedom. We have lots of enemies. And now I'm trying to seek the grounds, the foundations. How would I ground, how would I, present my arguments? What are the arguments? What are the foundations of freedom? That's not the right approach. The right approach is I sort of in presenting Ayn Rand, I'm putting myself in her shoes temporarily, I would say no. I'm a of course, first of all, novelist, and I'm also a philosopher. And as a philosopher, I'm presenting my philosophy that does not start with political philosophy. This is really with, I think, big distance, the last almost obvious, not obvious, but almost obvious implication of her whole philosophical system. So what she is starting, of course, with is existence exists and reason, and what is reason, and what are concepts, and then she develops the whole system, and then at the end of it we see, oh, that's why we need capitalism, because we need to be rational. That's the primary virtue for us to be able to pursue our life, to pursue happiness, and to live successfully in this world. There is no other. So that's how I would summarize. If there is only one message, I think I already again said it. If there is one message to, as a takeaway from this series of 5 sessions, this is it.
Cool. Anything to add?
I don't think I have anything to add.
Yes. My next question is, Jiří here is definitely, I'm sorry if I make a mistake, is an objectivist. Jan here, the other debater, it's more interesting. So can you, I think both of you, if you are not happy with the term objectivism, you can definitely define yourself elsewhere. But I would prefer, can Jan define yourself? What are your beliefs? How do you describe your views?
Technical sort of comment. Does the audience on the stream do they hear your questions?
I think they do. Yes.
And it's recorded with.
Yeah, it's recorded.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I think this is something that we will discuss later on to a bigger extent, but I think one of the things we would not have agreement on is what objectivism even is. So by the definition of most self-proclaimed objectivists, I'm not an objectivist. I believe in the stateless society being the moral way to govern society, and I believe I also differ by the range of primarily political issues. So I would say that I might be adjacent in many areas, as Jiří said, the ones that also objectivists themselves consider more important, but maybe primarily because my focus is elsewhere, because I'm an economist. I feel like I have more insight to even comment on the sphere of politics and economics, and those insights that I have led me elsewhere.
Cool. Is it really on the focus? Like on the focus, what do you do as a career? Is it really what you define yourself on?
I would say that's a very tricky and kind of personal question.
Yeah, sorry.
But I think that's the easiest way to communicate that. But I would find it hard to find one label for what I believe in. You could call me, in a sense, open system objectivist, but you could also call me nosy keen on many questions, or bleeding heart libertarian on many social questions, and you could call me many other things.
Okay, so what's objectivism for you? What's objectivism? How do you define objectivism? Or what's the which objectivism do you follow?
So I think that's an opening to the
Yes.
open-closed system debate. So and Jiří will correct me if I mischaracterize it, but there is a discussion about what objectivism is, and by Ayn Rand's own account and by the account of her direct followers, primarily represented by the people around Ayn Rand Institute and the Ayn Rand Institute, objectivism is should I?
Yeah.
Okay. Objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and therefore it's a closed system because Ayn Rand is no longer contributing to it. I mean, by all we know, it's unlikely she ever will again. So by that fact, it's closed. Nobody can ever contribute to it. And if you found out that something new, if you figure out something new that follows from objectivism, or as the things that she wrote, or if you found out that something that she wrote was not compatible with the rest of the system, and you correct the mistake, that would no longer be objectivism. That would need to be called something else, because objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. I think that is not how we typically approach schools of thought. Aristotelian philosophy is not only what Aristotle wrote. Kantian deontologism includes many things that Kant himself didn't write, and in order for us to usefully classify ideas, this is not a useful distinction. Secondly, I think that it leads to I think it's unstrategic, because what then are the outcomes when you do find a mistake, right? And what are you supposed to do then? So should you say, okay, well, objectivism has this one mistake, but if we correct it, we can no longer call it objectivism. So what do you do? Is that do you evade that you found a mistake and you continue to be an objectivist, or do you say, okay, well, we are rejecting all of this and we are replacing it with something called differently, which is exactly the same but differs only on this single point? Or are you so confident that there will never be a mistake found that you don't see this as a practical question to discuss? So I think it's impractical, and I think it's impractical in the sense as well that it seduces many people into a simplistic view on things when they no longer view any new questions that arise or that they encounter as is this right, but they view them as would Ayn Rand agree, and I think that is the root of many of the issues between objectivists or followers of Ayn Rand and people who share very similar idea differing in minor points, and I think also that Ayn Rand herself would surely dislike that happening because that essentially is, primacy of consciousness over reality, which she wrote a number of essays about as being wrong, right? And when you perceive the world not directly but through the ideas of or through the mind of Ayn Rand or eyes of Ayn Rand. So that, I guess, is my introduction to the topic from me. But I'm sure Jiří will have maybe more to add or something to rephrase in that.
Okay.
Let me start with saying I would much prefer if we don't really spend, at least not much, let alone most of our time with discussing open-ended and closed and whether people who call themselves objectivists and agree with her system on all the fundamentals, let's say on the 99% of implications of those fundamentals, and on several or just one applied, relatively minor point, they disagree. It's absolutely fine if these people still call themselves objectivists. But someone, this is not personal, but someone who fundamentally disagrees with her politics, with her political philosophy, can no longer call himself objectivist. That's so fundamental. Sort of completely rejecting her, albeit perhaps least important part of her philosophy, political philosophy, but still extremely important part. So, but there are people, and I've heard them say or mention, have wonderful lectures and everything, and in the middle of the lecture they say, on this point I differ from Ayn Rand. That's fine. And it's even better if they state it explicitly so that everyone knows. But why not still, call themselves or call ourselves objectivists if we agree on fundamentals and almost everything, all applications? And I mean, philosophy is not about, is not much about applications. That's the role of reason, to apply the fundamentals to daily life, to questions that come up with issues that we encounter, each day, every minute almost. How would the principle that I have embraced, how would I apply it here? Is it applicable here or is it not applicable? Which principle is applicable here? So it's a lot of thinking, and if I arrive at some conclusion how and which principle I should apply, that's not disputing objectivism. That's either correct or incorrect application of the philosophy, right? So I would rather really spend, but this I'm not a moderator of this debate, but I would rather spend time with questions from the audience, or even each of us can raise any question, interesting question, maybe related to some recent political, social events, issues, than spending time on this. That would be my big preference.
I had to ask.
Yeah, sure.
I had to ask about this open closed system question because I think it's the opening way to my next question, which is, okay, you both agree there are people who somewhat call themselves objectivists, but they have minor points which where they disagree. I don't know if Jan is one of this kind. Maybe Jan, you mentioned also that there might be several problems with the objectivism as philosophy of Ayn Rand. So can you point out which mistakes do you see, or what minor points would you change in the philosophy?
I think we can maybe open it up later on to the audience, or we can see if we have any questions, because I'm not sure if people are interested in hearing us discuss these particular topics. But as I already said, and as Jiří said, I am in disagreement on a lot of the politics, including the need for government, but also on intellectual property rights and questions of that kind. But in many ways, I think I am more in disagreement, less what Ayn Rand herself wrote, but more with where some of people who follow the ideas took them or how they apply them, and I'm interested in discussing also, maybe if we have time or if that's interesting, how that happens. That some of the applications seem very distant from where they came from, but I think we can really maybe open it up and see what questions come and what topics we get to talk about.
Okay, I have a few questions prepared, but if you have any questions now, please ask.
Yeah, I'd ask Jan, as you mentioned, you have some issues with the ideas that the followers of Ayn Rand promulgated. So, would you care to elaborate on that?
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't we repeat the question so that it's...
Okay, yeah.
I can do it.
Definitely.
If I heard correctly, the question is if Jan could elaborate on the minor. On what was the question again? Sorry.
On in which way the followers of Ayn Rand take the ideas to places she maybe didn't intend to.
Exactly.
Right?
In which way the followers of Ayn Rand?
Yeah, I think it was a follow-up on what I said at the end of what I was saying before, when I said that I observed that very often some followers of Ayn Rand take the ideas to places I would say she didn't intend to, or that are not really compatible with the body of objectivism. And I think the question was to elaborate on that, to explain what I meant.
Okay, so hopefully it got
So-
picked up by the mind. That's the only reason I'm trying to repeat it so that it's picked up.
Yeah. So I think to me it's very strange that there is still a very large alliance of many of people who call themselves objectivist and conservatism. You can see it times and again that also conservatives running for office, endorse Ayn Rand in some form, including people like Donald Trump, who questionably probably didn't read any of Ayn Rand, but quite likely. But it seems to be a name popular with these circles, and again there seems to be still some connection that you don't really see happening with the other part of the political spectrum, right? And that is on one way you can find easy explanations for that, such as value of productivity being historically, at least maybe not now anymore, but historically being valued to people who were on the right for limited government. So you can see some overlap there, but you also see much that Ayn Rand advocated for in terms of in terms maybe of what we would call social freedoms that is very distant from what we would expect conservatives to believe in. And it's strange to me to see this overlap, while at the same time I think that you can see a lot of people, and this, I think what I said so far mostly applied to maybe the broader movement, people who have lower understanding of the idea. Maybe they just heard something and that seemed appealing to them, but then the people who are actually very invested in the ideas also they I think, let me start again. I think there is curiously a lot of infighting in the movement, to a sense that doesn't seem strategic to me, and I think it partly connects to the understanding of the closed system objectivism, and I think it also connects to maybe some of the things that we will get to if we discuss what we think about Hayek. But I think it also connects to objectivists not really being happy to align with the liberal or classically liberal movement in the broader sense.
okay, follow up on that. I think on Jiří, should objectivists endorse the liberal movement?
What do you call
Libertarian movement.
No.
Why not?
Certainly not endorse. There is definitely a value in trying to address audience, even hostile audience, even related, well, not related, but let's say on certain level, ideas that might seem similar, like words, liberty. So to address audiences, libertarian audiences, conservative audiences on various issues, ideally as philosophical as possible. So that's certainly, I hold it as certainly valuable, but that's not endorsement. That's trying to explain this is what Ayn Rand held. This is the essence of her position, and always keep in mind that, as I said, that it's not enough, and it's very softly said. It's not enough if we have some similarities, and which would later, I think, blow up as not similarities if we understand how the words and how the concepts are developed and defined. But let's say at first glance, if we can identify some similarities, let's say in politics, then there is some semblance or of common ground that we can try to start, not even build on, but start from, and let's say developing from that seemingly same position or similar position, develop more let's say context that would explain what Ayn Rand's or objectivism's position on more broader issue or more concrete issue is. And there we would probably sooner or later find that there is a lot of disagreement between objectivism as philosophy with lots of people who seem to be related to Ayn Rand and are part of this liberty-oriented movement. But that's the problem. The problem is that if there is one in epistemology, in the theory of knowledge, if there is one word that would summarize the crux of the problem, that's concept. And if people use the same concept like liberty or selfishness and put a different meaning to it, then it's no use saying, okay, we have some common ground on this and this topic because we seem to be aligned on defending the same, now it comes, word, but it turns out that the word means something completely different for each group, like objectivists or non-objectivists or libertarians and conservatives. Speaking of libertarians and conservatives, I would say sort of explicitly, these are not intellectual friends of objectivism. This must be stated explicitly. These are opponents, but it's still very worth discussing with them and trying to explain where the differences, how deep the differences are, especially to young people who, given the education system that not just we, but everywhere in the world, they go through, they are completely confused about concepts, about, what is principle and how it's derived from lower level concepts and so forth and so forth. So it's sort of understandable that initially, at least, we would encounter many people who would be confused by what what later turns out to be a fundamental disagreement. Initially, it seems like there is something that we can agree on, that we have this big tent. No, objectivism is not part of any big tent. This is a philosophy. So, I mean, that's it.
Any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the big tent. I think the broader coalition we manage to build, the more we can achieve. And I think we might disagree somewhat on the root of the problem, or maybe on the definition of the problem. To me, libertarians or liberals or people who believe in some content of the word freedom, which I think we would agree on, and under the advocates of which we could subsume what we call libertarians or classical liberals, and they would of course have different ways of arriving at that content of the word freedom or the concept of freedom, and one of them would be objectivism, others would be different, and I do think as long as their ambition or their goals in the political sphere are the same, I think that's a very good alliance to have, and it's a good alliance among which to discuss these deeper issues. But I don't think that the fear that or the concern that somebody at some point later in the future would by differing because of their reasons why they arrived at the viewpoint discredit all the others so much that it would harm the cause, or that something like that would happen, is a concern that I think is bigger than the benefits that this coalition brings. And I think part of the coalition, part of the big tent, is universal on most political issues, because this is purely a political coalition in the sphere of politics, and some of it is more context dependent. So if we are now discussing, for example, as an ongoing question, the legalization of some recreational substances, I think the big tent to make that happen would very much involve many people on the left with whom we normally disagree on many things, even in the sphere of politics, because currently they are the ones who can help us achieve or come closer to freedom as we understand it. And next time when there is a possibility to cut some taxes or scrap some regulations, maybe we would have similar allies on the right. But I think the tent of course have walls, but that would be placed between us and the people who don't really understand us on what the content of the concept of freedom is. But I do see big value in the tent.
No, just if we clearly separate the realm of politics, if I were in politics, I would definitely vote with communists if they voted for legalization of drugs. I don't care who votes for it. It's completely irrelevant. Whoever votes for something that I hold as, desirable and justifiable and we need it, like legalization of drugs or major cuts in government spending in the areas where government has no business. Whoever, and I wouldn't even call it coalition, whoever votes with me on that, I'm fine. This is not the issue. The issue is to get it done. This is a good thing to do. I have reasons, and if others have different reasons, I don't care. I know that the goal is good, so whoever, you know, gets it done as a let's say byproduct of their intellectual positions, and we end up with the same conclusion. I think only objectivism or only people who use reason without contradiction arrive at the valid conclusion. But if other people arrive at the conclusion which has contradictions within their whole position, or you know, contradiction in, let's say, arriving at that conclusion from their premises, I don't care. This is not an intellectual debate. As long as we stay in the realm of politics, whatever you know, whoever votes for something rational, that's fine. But let's really keep it separate. It's not you know, intellectual discussion that should be, you know, somewhere else. And then of course there hell of a difference between objectivism and other ideological positions.
Just an addendum. I didn't mean coalition as in government coalition or necessarily by politics only voting. I did mean you know, like an intellectual cooperation or intellectual discourse in the sphere of politics in general, or maybe public debate you could call it, but not only voting or practical politics.
Okay. Any other questions or disagreements with everything said here or the last 4 sessions?
Anything. I thought it would be like a beginning to objectivism, so I don't really know what it is. And from these discussions, I'm not really smarter, to be honest. So if I could ask to briefly introduce the philosophy to me in a few words, just to understand what you guys are into, that would be amazing.
Okay,
Yeah, sure.
I'll try.
Go for it.
5 words or 4?
No, it could be sentences, it could be whatever. Just to clarify for me, please.
I think Ayn Rand called it, or someone someone asked her to summarize her position very, very briefly. Yeah. And I think she or the moderator said, while I'm standing on 1 foot, right? So it has to be very short summary, because, you know, if you're standing on 1 foot, you can, you know, not too long keep that position, so you have to be very, very concise. So the philosophical system starts with who are we and where are we? What is this where we are? Is it reality governed by natural laws, or is it some kind of space where there's some influences, major influences from some other supernatural dimension, like God, or some mystical realm, of which this world of ours is just some kind of unreal manifestation, or so that's the first question, and her answer is existence. You know, there's just one world, and that's the world we live in, natural world, so natural laws, existence exists, that's it. Then how do we know? You know, how do we know that? The only tool for knowing reality, for perceiving reality, is reason. That's the only tool. Only reason is our tool to know, to perceive, and to know, get to know reality. And to know means what? To know means not just the animal level of knowing. What is animal level of knowing? It's just sense perception. That's not enough, because we're different kind of animal. We have conceptual level, we have concepts. So on the conceptual level, that's reason, starting with senses, and then through the tools called concepts, and using the method of logic, we develop our conceptual knowledge. That's the knowledge we're talking about. That's reason. There is no other tool of knowing the world, just reason based on the senses. So, where are we? I said, here in this world, natural laws. How do we know? By reason. And who are we? Among others, we are a volitional beings. Humans are volitional beings, which means we have a capacity to choose. We have a volition. It's sometimes called free will. As I explained in one of the lectures, it's better I think, preferable to call it volition, because it's not exactly about political freedom, right? So it's better to call it volition. And given we have that capacity, unlike other animals, given we have that capacity, we can choose wrongly or rightly. We can choose correctly or incorrectly. Animals do not choose. They do how they're programmed. So they don't need any philosophy. They don't need any ethics. We do need an area, broad principles, how to guide our choices, how to guide our behavior, because we have free will, we have volition. Yeah, I just violated what I said, not free will, but volition. Anyway, so that's ethics. That's why we need ethics. And the major, let's say, concept in ethics is selfishness, and that's a whole philosophical development of what does it mean to be selfish? What is selfishness, and what does it mean? How does one figure out, discover what is in man's self-interest? It's not whatever one feels like. It's not. What is in man's self-interest is, if he chooses to live, which he implicitly does, he has to pursue certain path, and the way to pursue it is governed by these ethical principles that are developed again by reason. So selfishness only tells us we should act in our self-interest, but what self-interest is and what does it mean? That self-interest means being productive, being intellectually independent, have integrity, being just in our decision. I mean, just act justly, to simply apply the principle of justice, honesty. So that's the whole area of ethics. And then comes political philosophy, which says, okay, this is who man is, this is where he lives, this is the tool of acquiring knowledge. So if man finds himself in the group, be it large or smaller group of people, which we call society, if it's a large group of people, how should one apply these moral principles? How should one act, let's say, even on the desert island alone? How should one apply these principles when one lives in society? That's why we need political philosophy. How should society be organized? Organized in the best sense of the word. Doesn't mean organized by central planning or something, but what principles should govern the relationships between people in society, and that's the subject of political philosophy. To develop which principles are they to allow people to be moral, to allow to pursue their moral goals, to be selfish, right? So that's political philosophy, and there the one word is individual rights capitalism, right? So that's the, and then of course is the area of aesthetics, which I have not much to say about. I would just say, Ayn Rand was romantic. Is it romantic realist or something like that? So all her novels and all her fiction writing is is governed by the principle of, romantic realism. And I wouldn't elaborate on that because that's the area I'm not much familiar with. I mean, I am familiar, but not in the position to much discuss or elaborate on.
I do think you.
I'm still standing on one foot.
Strong leg, yes.
Strong leg.
Any other questions, disagreement? No. Okay, I think we have to do it. We have to dive deeper into the political philosophy thing, where you guys disagree with each other mostly, I'd say. So I think one of the first sentences that Jan said this evening is that he is for stateless society or something like that. So can you explain how this could be, how you can be objectivist in your sense and still believe in no government? Is it something that Ayn Rand should have been as well, and she just didn't check her premises?
So I just want to clarify, because somebody is here for the first time and we don't know each other well, or somebody is watching online, that I also don't think that this is, the first thing, that the first problem on the order of the day. We have many more urgent issues to deal with, and I mean not this in this debate, but generally as a movement, society, there is many more urgent problems that we are contending with, and it's also not something that I introduce myself as. So I don't go around telling people that I'm an anarchist. I don't think that really is strategic if you want to create some understanding of the ideas, because that's when many people stop listening. But since we are discussing that, I think if you are for the principle of individual rights, as Jiří said, I think this is the only way to go, because to summarize it as briefly as I can, I don't think there is a way there can be a government which does not violate individual rights.
Cool. Disagreements?
I don't want to repeat myself. This is a major disagreement. I would just repeat what is major part of the system of objectivist philosophy, which is government as a objective tool of implementing and securing individual rights in society. The issue in one sentence is that use of force, which is the only sensible and only required response to initiation of force, so to stop the force that has been initiated, one has to use force, and the whole political philosophy is about how to do it. And if there is an intellectual position, anarchy, which says the way to do it is to leave on the individuals to decide on who initiated the force, how should we respond, what processes, what are exactly the procedures, and we will have some market participants negotiating what is force, what is proper force, and what are the procedures, and there are other participants. We cannot even call it market, because market is not an exchange of force. Market is exchange of values. So if one says, I am producing a value of self-defense, this is not the essence of political philosophy, this is not the essence of the whole field. The essence of the whole field is not how to produce and exchange value of providing self-defense. The essence of that whole field of political philosophy is how to make sure that the force that is being used in retaliation to initiation of force, so how self-defensive or force in self-defense, how should it be used in order to objectively make sure that the individual rights get protected. So it's not about market. It's about finding the way and identifying the only objective way how to do it. It's not about exchange. Yeah, there are some people there who are part of the whole institutional structure of government, and they're employees, and of course there is some exchange, but that's all trivial. The essence of that whole intellectual field where we are trying to find answers to our questions, the essence of that is how should the retaliatory force be used? So we cannot say, oh, that's just another part of the market. There is a market for goods and services, and we just apply this market principle on all areas of human life. That's disregarding the fundamental difference in using force as against voluntarily producing a value, right? So,
if I may, a follow-up from my end. I think it's important, if this is the first time you are part of a debate on this topic, is to realize that what people who are for a stateless society are for is not, the Hobbesian war of man on man. It's not everybody for himself or themselves. It's basically the dispute isn't between a government and everybody doing what they can, but it is primarily between a government and a plurality of entities providing protective services, as Jiří said, a market. So it is not, it is hard to imagine what that society would look like, but different people have put forth different theories about how this institutional setup could work. Some to me are more credible than others. That would be probably too long to discuss here, but it's important to realize that the difference is between people choosing the providers of protection rather than having one government. It's not between a government and nothing. As I said, I think by eliminating the freedom to choose the provider, the government commits or interferes with people's rights, and that makes it illegitimate. So I don't think there can be a government, a monopolistic government, to differentiate it in a way that it would not be a rights violation. In the same way that it can happen with, so that while this can happen, that there can be a legitimate non-governmental system. Jiří said, I think that's a very common argument, that there can be no market for force or market for violence. I think that is a mischaracterization in a sense, because what we are discussing here, of course, is not market for violence, right? We are not talking, somebody ordering hitmen. We are talking about people choosing who they delegate the right to self-defense for. So we are always at all times talking about self-defense or retaliation, which objectivists are very much for. And same as any government in in the objectivist framework derives its power or its right to do what it does in the conception from the consent of the governed, from people delegating part of their right to self-defense to the government. I think there is, I think in the same way they can do it freely to any entity that comes about, not necessarily the government, and saying that they have to delegate this right to the government is not distinguishing between a market and something else. That's basically somebody saying, well, you don't have this right to begin with because there is something about this entity that can take this right from you. So I don't think the concept of market for violence is really right, because I don't think that's what anybody is for.
Cool. I think we could continue a lot with this debate, but I just recently watched a debate with Brian Kaplan and Yaron Brook. They did a whole debate in New York, I think a month ago or so, on that topic. So I would very much recommend watching that. So we don't have to do that here as well. Cool. But I do have another questions regarding politics, because last week we had Angel here talking about the objectivist politics, and I asked a question. Well, I asked a lot of questions, but I asked a specific question which I don't think I received a pleasing answer to, and it was, I don't want to ask that question specifically, but I want to ask what she answered. My question was if I forgot what was my question, but my question was something about related to people, how to deal with people that commit crimes in society, and if they should get a penalty of 5 years or 6 years, is that an objective measurement, and can there exist an objective measurement for penalties for committing crimes and so on? But she answered with a question that there has to be an objective formula for laws, and so. But she also said that she don't have the formula with her head. But I just don't think that this formula could exist, because the society is so much difficult that it can't be truly represented as a one big formula for penalties and so on. So can you, Jiří, I think, make a comment on that? Can we have objective laws?
We can and we must. I would make a parallel, maybe before I get to the specific question, I would make a parallel between this specific case or issue with deciding on what is the age of adulthood, right? In Czech Republic we have 18, I don't know, elsewhere there might be 19 or...
Italy 30, I recently found out.
And it's this distinction that I also made, I think once when in the previous sessions, that while being objective, while applying the principle there are still options. Like I have to be productive as a major ethical virtue, but it's not a matter of philosophy or morality or it's just a matter of reason. Apply reason governed by philosophy, governed by ethics, for me to use to decide in which particular area of human endeavor, should I exercise my capacity to produce values. I can be miner, I can be banker, I can be a writer, whatever. So it's optional. It's optional, and at the same time, it's objective. It's applying objectively a principle that is that is objectively developed as a principle necessary to pursue human life. So along these lines, I would look at or approach the issue with the penalties. There certainly has to be specific grading, or ranking of the seriousness of crimes, and certainly someone who steals a wallet should not get the same penalty of someone who murders someone else. But I can easily imagine that in some society or some nation, the government would adopt a law, where this particular crime would be sentenced 3 years, and elsewhere it would be 5 years. That's not a matter of philosophy. So like Angela, I would have the same position. This is not philosophy. Philosophy tells you have to stop someone who used force as first. You have to stop him, and you have to punish him. You have to make him accountable, take the consequences of his actions, and the consequences have to be such that he has to not just feel, but he has to in reason understand that doing wrong things, doing things against human life, have impact on destroying the victims, and the person who destroys someone has to bear the consequences. So he has to be punished in some way, and then of course whether this kind of punishment or that length of sentence, that's not philosophy. So I wouldn't also sort of try to speculate or to simply suggest any particular. One big theme is, and I think that sort of borders with philosophy. Maybe one could, I think, argue it's part of political philosophy, whether there should be a capital punishment, right? So Ayn Rand's position, if I remember correctly, was that sort of morally, she was inclined to be in favor of capital punishment, but given that that man is fallible and can make mistakes, so if you make a mistake in sentencing someone to death, and then later on it turns out that this was a unjust decision, you cannot bring him back to life. So on that ground, practical ground, she I think was not in favor of capital punishment as a legal tool or legal as a kind of punishment, or the highest punishment.
So, if I may, I also think that for this we would need somebody who understands jurisprudence and who can talk more about theory of law. That's something that abstract thinking about objectivism doesn't give you. This needs more concrete, more specific knowledge. But I think many people have tried to figure out what the measure of punishment should be. To me, the guiding principle is that what we are attempting, or what we should be attempting when we are trying to achieve justice, is restoration rather than deterrence. So I think you do not punish people for crimes because you want to deter other people from doing the same. I think that's a utilitarian view on justice that I don't endorse, and I don't think objectivists do either. You want to restore justice. So if somebody stole a TV set but didn't hurt anybody, you want the person who got stolen from to be, return his TV set and compensated for the inconvenience. That would be restoration of justice, and doing more over restoration of justice would be towards deterrence or extracting some extra punishment, which I don't see the reasoning for. As many people have tried to find this guiding principle, I think some are smarter than others. For example, the Rothbard theory is that's one I do not endorse, but just as an illustration, he says that whenever somebody does anything to anybody that violates that person's right, now the same person has the right to do twice as much to the transgressor, because he says once to restore justice. So if somebody steals my TV, they need to return it, to restore it, and then because they violated my rights in the amount of one TV set, now they in turn am entitled to violate their rights in the form of one TV set. So they should give me, the value of 2 TV sets back, and that would be restoration of justice. When it becomes problematic, of course, is when we start talking about, physical harm, because we do not want to, I presume, live in a society where we extract physical punishments. And Rothbard has the idea that would not in fact happen, because what he says is, when somebody assaults me and then I have the court found that the person was guilty and grants me the right to, assault them in the same manner and to the same degree twice in return, then the person presumably would not like to get assaulted, so they would have to pay me enough or compensate me otherwise enough so that I no longer want to do that. So essentially they would buy off me the right to extract justice in the physical way. I don't think that would be appealing to people to either extract the justice or to anybody involved to be part of that process. So as much as I don't have the answer of what the just form of restoring justice would be, I think there's a few guiding principles that I am confident in, and one is that we should avoid physical punishment, including capital punishment. I think we should avoid prison time for victimless crimes. Possibly try to minimize the time we send people to prison for as much as we can, and I had one more which I can't remember. So I think I will end there. But this is maybe, as I said, my bleeding heart libertarianism shining through.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the one of course was that I don't think, for the same reason that Jiří said, that we should have capital punishment as an option, because first of all of the uncertainty problem, and secondly, of course, because when that's on the table, it becomes much more easier to for semi-authoritarian regimes to misuse.
I would just add the comment to the concept or what was the phrase victimless or victimless crime. If I understand correctly, that is something that can only arise in society like ours that violates, even massively violates individual rights. As an example, drugs, right? If I, destroy my life by taking drugs and I'm producing drugs and dealing with drugs, trade drugs, not to minors. I mean, not to children. That's something that I'm sure the state should prohibit. But with among adults, whatever you produce that you harm yourself, whatever harmful stuff you sell to someone, that's their business. So that's victimless crime, and that should not be illegal. So in the rational, free society, there shouldn't be anything. By definition, there shouldn't be anything like victimless crime. So that would not come up at all. So that's just minor.
I agree.
Addition.
I agree. And you reminded me of what I wanted to. The last thing that I wanted to say, and that also applies to the world as is now. I think that one thing that we should definitely not be doing, and unfortunately often are demonstrative punishments that are not meant as a means of extracting justice, but as a statement. So you reminded me when you spoke about the examples of the victimless crimes, because an example, we recently celebrated 10 years of Ross Ulbricht, the founder of Silk Road, being in prison. I think it was 10 years, maybe even more. But not celebrated, but we remembered. Sorry, but that's an example of a person who was sent to I think multiple life sentences for running a website that sold drugs, but he got such a nonsensical punishment because the thing that he did was new, because this kind of website was a new thing, and that the government wanted to make a statement. I think we do have this kind of excessive sort of demonstrative punishments in our system as well, and I think that's a practice of totalitarian regimes.
Cool. Any questions? Okay, I think we are good to move to the final topic, because Jan, I believe, read the whole book because of this debate. It's, I believe, this book. Yes. So it's not a large story, but a whole book because of this debate. So because this is Jiří's book, and I think Jiří is they're arguing that Hayek wasn't a good guy for the brain. So I would firstly give you Jiří some time to defend his position that Hayek wasn't a great person in the philosophical part, and then we can have a discussion about that.
Yeah, it's very important to distinguish Hayek qua philosopher and Hayek qua economist. There is maybe one point there about Hayek and critiquing him, let's say attacking Hayek on his economic point, but I'm not exactly sure where it is, but 99% of that is Hayek's philosophy. So to sum up or to summarize my position on Hayek, Hayek is a derivative. Hayek is a philosophically derivative of the worst philosophy that we had in the last 300 years, which is Immanuel Kant and David Hume. And Hayek is a combination of these two toxic toxic elements. He develops it further as other philosophers have developed Hume's and Kant's philosophy in the 19th and 20th century, and even this century. So that's to start with. So not in good company. To understand the wrong philosophical premises that Hayek is coming from, we would really need to deeply dive into David Hume's philosophy and Immanuel Kant's philosophy. But basically, Hayek is a person who is very skeptical of the power of reason. However, he says in many places that he is not an enemy of reason. He just wants to recognize the limits of reason, and he calls it the arrogance of reason and conceit and fatal conceit, and we should be humble and recognize that reason is not here to understand reality, and definitely not in the moral realm, and even in other realms, even not in science. So in the realm of morality, he was basically endorsing Hume's position that all questions of morality are not subject of rational sort of are not answerable in reason, by reason. Morality is a subject of other influences and mostly tradition, some abstract rules that somehow very mysteriously are being developed, even unconsciously being developed as Kantian categories in our mind. We're not even aware of these rules. We just have to go by what the tradition is. So that's in the area of morality. In the area of cognition, it's really the major problem is in Hayek's false theory of concepts. Hayek completely, like Kant, completely reverses the role of concepts as something derivative from the base from which concepts have to be and are derived, which is the sense perception. Hayek says something else. Hayek says even things like those abstractions, which is concepts, even philosophical concepts like identity, existence, causality, they're not concepts derived from sense perception. They're concepts even not even from reality as it exists independent of human consciousness. They are in our consciousness. So, of course, philosophers know that it was Kant who divided, has drawn a major divide between reality of things in themselves, which we cannot know because we have our sense perception and our built-in categories, these concepts, these abstractions that bar the, quote, direct access to that noumenal, to that real reality. What we only can know is phenomenal reality, that are these phenomena that are the result of our perception. So it's a huge topic, and Hayek was completely influenced and without any question maybe developed even further to the worst, developed further Kant's position or Kant's epistemology. Simply, the major problem is reversing the order of concepts and percepts. So what Hayek says, percepts are the result of our built-in abstractions that we do not form. It gets formed unconsciously by this interaction with other people, and it's a matter of evolution, how we get the language and the words from previous generations, and it's passed on, and it somehow gets evolved unconsciously in our mind. And given these built-in unconsciously abstractions, given them, and we cannot influence them, they are not subject to our volition, which is a major opposition to what objectivism says. Objectivism says no, concepts are something that we create, that we by volition create based on sense perception, based on reality that we perceive by our senses. So that's the major reversal, leading then to complete subjectivism by just accepting whatever society, previous generations gives as a mainstream or generally accepted content, then gets built into those abstractions as the meaning of those abstractions. That's something simply that we don't choose. It somehow gets evolved through this interaction. Hayek even says somewhere, I'm quoting in the book, I have so many quotes to demonstrate. Hayek even says that reason is not a capacity of the individual. Hayek says reason is a result of interpersonal process. Right? So that's for him reason. So we need to somehow interact with each other and get this forces, unknowable forces of human interaction, society, of tradition, somehow gets absorbed, and through this interaction, somehow our abstractions get evolved, and then they influence how we perceive by our senses. So for him, it does not start with the senses. He even says somewhere that we already have the theory, and based on our inbuilt theories, categories, we perceive, and each of us can perceive differently because we have some built-in theories. So this is absolutely wrong position in epistemology, in the theory of knowledge. So Hayek is a skeptic. He is a moral subjectivist, relativist. He is an altruist. He is completely endorsing morality of self-sacrifice. He is a statist, collectivist in almost. You go page by page in his major works, Fatal Conceit and the Counter-Revolution of Science and Individualism and Economic Order, or all his famous articles, Use of Knowledge in Society. All of these, one big mistake after another. He could be viewed as I don't know now the right expression for someone who apologizes for freedom, right? So he says we cannot know as individuals, reality, we have to have this interpersonal process, and we need these traditions to adjust to what society needs. We have to have this freedom to be able to produce the good for society. I think he even endorses the concepts, collectivist concepts like maybe not directly common good or public interest, but something along these lines. So it's everywhere. And in his political philosophy, he is known as a defender of welfare state. One of the sentences that completely struck me was that what we are, as you know, he as a representative of the defense of capitalism, he said somewhere, what we are for is not the is not a free. It was somewhere where he discussed the competition. So he said, what we are for is somewhere in the whatever chapter about competition. Maybe it's worth finding it. We need to manage. We need to manage. So-called manage the market, manage the market participants, manage the companies to enforce the competition, which is complete contradiction. How can you enforce competition, right? Competition is a byproduct of someone being free to produce, to trade. And Hayek says in these instances, many instances, we have these large companies and they have so much power, so we need to make sure that the competition works. So the question is, how can competition not work? So what he says somewhere is that we need to have this this system which is as possible as close as possible to competition, not freedom. I would have to find it maybe while Jan has some comments on the book or on my position. In the meantime, I will find the quote, because it is extremely revealing quote what Hayek actually stands for. So Hayek is a welfare statist. He is a person who would endorse at least to some extent antitrust laws, which is disaster. Antitrust laws are one of the worst laws, destroying the free society and destroying the business. Antitrust laws, so he would be for it. He has many reservations to intellectual property, I think.
Okay, so I think it's time. Yeah.
Maybe let me get the book. I'll find the.
I think what we mean over is page 71.
71. Yeah. So let me read it here.
Okay, so.
Okay.
In
So.
In the meantime, yeah.
I think we differ somewhat in our understanding of Hayek. That being said, I definitely did not have enough time to read Jiří's book as thoroughly as it deserves, because, as Jiří said, it has a lot of quotes, a lot of references. So to be able to, comment on it better, I would definitely need to read it more thoroughly than I did. But if I may read Jiří at Jiří, I think there is a paragraph at the end of page 21 that I think summarizes well partly what Jiří was saying and partly where I think we differ in our interpretation of Hayek. The book is of course in Czech, so I will try to translate loosely as I read it. So the scheme of Hayek's deduction is in its nature as follows. One reason is not able to explain social phenomena, institutions and processes because human action isn't led primarily by reason but by habit, tradition and imitation. Second, Cartesian rationalism is as opposed to this defense of reason as a sovereign tool of human understanding. Free application of Cartesian rationalism on social questions leads to the attempt to direct society centrally, and from these premises follows the conclusion that for trust in the power of reason to create knowledge or to lead to knowledge leads to the attempt to direct society. So I apologize for butchering the translation, but I think that is not the understanding of Hayek that I have. So if I can take this step by step, I think there is a lot of places in the book when you quote Hayek as criticizing reason where I don't think he does that. So illustrative of that is the very first chapter on page 7 where you say that the conviction about the power of reason to recognize reality or to understand reality and to be our sovereign tool to rational, moral, and therefore successful practical action, Hayek calls fatal conceit, as he also called this book. So the name fatal conceit comes actually from Adam Smith when he talks in the theory of moral sentiments about the man of system, and that's why Hayek adopted that name, because in that book Smith says that the central planner, the man of the system, in his fatal conceit views people as pieces on a chessboard meaning the central planner can move on the chessboard with accordance with his design, hence also the terminology human action, human design, and not respecting that the chess figures have aims and goals of their own. So I would say that there is what Hayek is mostly critical of is the understanding of reason as some mystical faculty of a central planner that gives him the tool or gives them the tool, to sit in an armchair and generate knowledge about things that are inside other people's minds. So, for example, what Hayek is critical of is of Stepan sitting at home and figuring out whether I should order a beer or a Coke. Because that is knowledge that until I order something, it is not revealed to anybody what my preference was. I might not know what I will order tonight. I might not know it, I can be looking at the menu, I might not know until the waiter comes, and then I suddenly, on spur of the moment, order something. And that's the kind of information that's not revealed to anybody, not even myself, until I make that choice. So I think Hayek mostly talks about this kind of preferences and the aggregation problem. And when I think he talks in many of the passages about using reason to arrive at knowledge, I think he means this kind of collective knowledge about about the status of society, what the what the current snapshot of society is, what's in people's minds, rather than reason as an individual faculty. But I know that you mentioned that paragraph about reason as an individual faculty as well. I will try to get to that. But moving further down the passage that I read about, because I think another important point is the one about imitation, where reason is not, sorry, it was not meant as a comment. I was just looking for the passage. Reason isn't competent or isn't able to explain social phenomena, institutions, and processes because human action is not led primarily by reason, but by custom, traditions, and imitation. And I think earlier or elsewhere you also criticized Hayek as saying that reason is something gained by imitation, or that the primary source of knowledge is imitation. I think that's along the lines of what you criticize in Hayek. So I do think that Hayek has a lot to say about imitation, and Hayek does. I agree. Hayek does say that reason is not what we begin with, and I think Hayek means this in both senses. So in the phylogenetic sense and the ontogenetic sense, as an individual and as a society. So I think, and I'm no expert on these topics, this is just my very cursory reading of Hayek, but I think that what Hayek means is that as human mind is born and it develops, it comes to the world as tabula rasa, yes, a brain, but not maybe yet in the beginning, a reasoning mind, and it starts by imitating others, and as it develops and acquires knowledge through imitation, it begins to be able to form concepts and to then make its own logical conclusions based on what knowledge it already, or information it already acquired, and how it expands in its capacities. I think an example of that would be when you look at some of the wolf children, the children who by some accident, some misfortune grew up away from civilization, they who develop by imitating animals they even potentially grew up with, they did not reach the standard cognitive level for their age, and most often than not they never managed to catch up. And I think the other way Hayek talks about imitation, and that's very much connected to how he talks about reason, is in the collective sense, in the social sense. So that is the development of institutions, because I think if there is one big topic in the Fatal Conceit in the book, it's institutions. And I think Jiří also comments on that on the same page where I read from. So where there is a passage actually from Hayek that René Descartes claimed that all useful human institutions were and should be a deliberate product of conscious reason, and I think Hayek is critical of that, and I think you are critical of Hayek being critical
Absolutely.
of that, and you also go on further down to say that you believe that institutions should be a product of human design but led by reason, as Ayn Rand understands it. So I think, and I'm sorry for making this so long, but I think that what Hayek has to say about institutions is that institutions not necessarily mean, just as a point of clarification, I don't know, like the Department of the Interior, like what we typically call institutions. Institutions could be money, or property rights are an institution. That is, and these have developed somehow. We would be doing I don't want to engage in the reconstruction of how they might have developed, but I would wager with Hayek that they did not develop by somebody making the argument for reason and for individual rights and explaining it to everybody in the same tribe, but that they somehow developed evolutionary by people imitating others and societies who adopted these good institutions surviving. And we now, with our level of knowledge, are looking at these institutions and we are saying, yeah, that's great that there are property rights because they, in fact, they are in accordance with the philosophy that we have, but they didn't come about as somebody figuring out the philosophy and instituting property rights. And I don't think Hayek is saying that we should not improve on the institutions he has. He just says that we should bear in mind that many of these institutions could be errors, of course, but most of them came about by process of eliminations and societies that adopted these institutions surviving. And before we reject the institutions, we should be very mindful of how they came about, right? That is actually an argument that is now commonly used by conservatives, for example, because one of the institutions now that we very often that has become politicized and we often talk about changing is the institutions of marriage, right? So so that's an example of an institution that developed. We should change it now, but we should also be mindful of how it developed while we are doing that, so that we can better communicate why it now needs changing, but also while we understand what we are doing. Sorry, that was a complete sidebar from Jiří's argument, but I think that. And I will let you respond, but I had just one more note that I considered important on the institutions, and now I am struggling to remember it. But I think that what was it that I wanted to say about institutions? Well, never mind. I will remember.
Okay, I think.
We could discuss this for hours and hours. I mean, this is something where I applied objectivism in fundamentally criticizing Hayek's philosophy. I don't know if it's. I don't have time actually to spend not minutes but hours in defending each point and discussing how corrupt. Hayek's view of reason is. Just example with these institutions. Hayek comes from the premise that what reason is a flash of insight, right? So he defenders of reason he sees as people who say, all of a sudden I know everything. No, that's not reason. Reason is a process of observing with our senses, observing reality, drawing by induction, which is what David Hume fundamentally and Hayek after him fundamentally disagree with, that there is anything like induction. You know, David Hume's famous problem of induction. We cannot have any inductive knowledge. Nothing is absolute, nothing is certain. Who knows whether the sun will rise tomorrow? Hayek saying that institutions are something that is spontaneously developed. It's just a way from him, a way for him to say or to somehow account how these institutions developed, because he's an enemy of reason. So they somehow developed by this imitation and just waiting. We try something and then waiting what it does, and we have no idea what it does because there is no causality. Causality is in here; it's not in the world. We cannot perceive by our senses some instances that repeat frequently, and we don't have metaphysics that tells us there is an existence, identity, and so forth, and we have our sense perception that observes reality, and then by induction, and there has to be some methods of induction, then we develop this or this knowledge of this or this causality. This is how reason works. And Hayek criticizing reason for not able to come up with institutions. This is a straw man on Hayek's part, meaning that someone would say that money all of a sudden, in flash of insight, got discovered, or one day someone said, market, that's it, market. No, there was an activity of people first producing something, then, finding that, they can produce more, then they consume, and there other people consume something, and there is a potential beneficial for both sides to trade, and that's something that we could engage in, and it's beneficial, and later on we call it market, and market developed, then came money as again specific development. But all of that is based on observation and developing, which only explicitly then was, let's say, identified as market, or as some causal laws or economic laws even. But all that is a manifestation of the power of reason, not of inability of reason to all of a sudden come up with some ready institution or something. What I call in the book, Hayek's premise there is omniscience standard. He often uses this. He doesn't call it that, but that's his hidden premise, omniscience standard. So it's dropping context, right? The context, the reason our knowledge gets developed given the context of known, and then we build on that knowledge more and more. We observe more and more things in reality and actions of entities, and that's how reason works. That's induction, and then arriving at principles, and then using deduction and so forth. So that's something that Hayek from the very beginning disagrees with, because he's Humean. He's fully Humean, and Hume was the one who destroyed causality and who perceives the world as something completely disconnected, and even existence does not exist. That's all somewhere floating, and everything is floating, and the properties of things. This has this length and this all the properties that all things have. That's something that does not exist in reality. That's some floating things that are somewhere in our mind, and our mind habitually, by habit, develops this in our mind as a entity, and we have to have some. This is so deep philosophically, so deep and so wrong, and Hayek completely swallows all of that from Hume and then from Kant. So I mean, we could discuss that for long. Let me just mention this very revealing passage that Hayek said in 48a. So it's in the book Hayek 48. So it's in. I think it's in Individualism, Economic Order, isn't it?
Yes,
Like,
yes, it seems to be.
yeah. So he says, quote, this is Czech translation, so it may not be a fully sort of reproducing what he wrote in English, but I'll try to translate back to English. Free enterprise, quoting Hayek, quote, free enterprise and competitive order, free enterprise and competitive order, these two formulations do not refer to the same system. They do not refer to the same system. And now it comes, it's the second that we want. So the first, I'm now, saying what we heard, what we just heard. Free enterprise, that's the first, and competitive order are not the same things. And Hayek says now what we want is the second. So free enterprise, that's fine, but that's not it. Free enterprise meaning that we leave laissez-faire, we'll leave people, individuals and companies produce voluntarily and trade what they want. That's not the system that we want, Hayek says. We need to get closer to this perfect competition, although elsewhere, Hayek says this model of perfect competition is completely wrong and everything, but at the same time, Hayek has many contradictions. At the same time, he tries to get us closer to this model of competition and sort of implicitly embraces this economic power problem that if you have companies that given given what wealth they created and what success they had on the market, given how economically powerful, which is not using force but by trade, given that this economic power, that's something that limits competition. They don't compete as we would like, as we society would like to have them. So it's the second, it's the competitive order that we want. So Hayek is absolutely okay with managing competition, which is antitrust laws. In other words, antitrust laws, one of the worst regulations, and using government force against the business, right? So this is just one of tens and tens and tens, maybe hundreds of examples how Hayek. This is just the last manifestation in his politics or in his economic policy, which should be zero. Of course, there shouldn't be any economic policy in free society. But his major problem is in epistemology and ethics. Hayek is altruist. Hayek is collectivist. Everyone should read the book. And then I'm serious. Let's have a special session or special even a conference or whatever meeting on Hayek. Doesn't have to be about my book, but on Hayek. And I'll be very glad to discuss Hayek and to really prepare and in English to quote you, to substantiate my position. How deeply Hayek is undermining whatever we need to arrive at the in political philosophy at the system which is free and which is capitalism, right? So he undermines everything. So he is actually trying to preserve the effect of something that he destroys the base for, completely destroys reason and morality. Right? So I'm sorry, I need to.
So I understand, and thank you very much. I just wanted to very, very quickly follow up because I remembered when you were speaking, you actually reminded me of what I wanted to say before. So I think we could debate much longer about reason. I really do think that some of the things that you again quoted are referring to Hayek talking about collective reason and the central planning not being to, abstractly generate knowledge about what's in people's minds. But I also do want to say that, and that's a debate I've been having with Pavel Potůžák for a long time, that Hayek, and that's the last thing I wanted to say before, is, and you reminded me when you quoted the thing about competition, Hayek is not a moral philosopher. He is, and when he talks about the evolution of morality, he's not being normative. He's not saying this is how things should be. He is descriptive. He says this is how the institutions came about, as far as we know. This is how things seems to be working. But he's not saying this is how we should do anything, or how we should arrive at knowledge, how we should build institutions. And when he does that, I think there is only one thing, one normative criterion that I've managed to read from Hayek, and that is the selection of institutions seems to be leaving us with good institutions. And that he doesn't go into the reasons much. He's not saying whether in the current state of the world it's because by reason we arrive at better improvements to the institutions, or just because sometimes the people who have the better opinion outvote the others, and because their solution works it stays, and that's how we move forward. He's not really, or sometimes by private innovation we develop completely new institutions we couldn't have imagined before. He's not really saying how that happens, but all he is saying is that the competition, he calls it competition as discovery procedure, seems to be leaving us with better and better institutions. And therefore Hayek is saying what we should be doing when we vote or when we discuss politics, we should not limit the competition that gives us the improving institutions. And I think that would also be the meaning of the phrase that you quoted, and I think that would be Hayek's argument for individual rights and private property and these kind of things, because they are the things that seem to be leaving us with the space to explore improvements to institutions. So I'm not saying that as a defense of Hayek, but maybe as a follow-up interpretation of what of the passage that Jiří was saying. And my final thing, which is kind of a defense of Hayek, but maybe not of the sort that is attractive to many people. Hayek was a public intellectual, in the sense that no objectivist ever was, maybe with the exception of Alan Greenspan, but we know how that went. So Hayek, when he wrote with 1948, his concern was the growing power of the Soviet Union, and how enamored the Americans and the British were with the Soviet system. There is the famous, I forgot now, and Martin left the room so he can't remind me, the name of the Samuelson, who wrote the most famous economics textbook, perhaps the most successful textbook on economics of the first time, where he claims that the Soviet system will prove to be more effective in generating wealth than private enterprise. That was the time that Hayek was writing on, and maybe he was being inconsistent, but I would say that he sometimes tended to pick his battles, and he chose deliberately to be acceptable to people so that he could influence what he saw as the biggest threats in the debate. And I think, at least in some ways, he was successful, and that we can call it hypocrisy, but I think it was a strategy that we benefited from. And one note on specifically the antitrust. The antitrust is from the Roosevelt administration that was in power 50 years before Hayek was born. So he was not involved with promoting the antitrust by the time it was originating and when the biggest breakups of the companies were going on.
Okay, so thank you very much, both of you. Okay.